Hello, I'm here with, you wanted to be called Joy, right?
Yeah. Should we start this over?
It's fine. I will edit the audio afterwards.
Okay. Anyway, hi, I'm Joy. I am a counseling student right now. So we're going to be looking at Houseki no Kuni, and we'll be doing it from a lens where we're both kind of looking at the emotional states of some of the characters. And obviously, like, well, I know a lot about psychology. I don't know everything. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt.
How does the brain anatomy of rocks affect?
See, they're extremely different from humans, which makes it very hard to compare, especially when you're looking at the DSM-5 and you're trying to, diagnose characters.
This is one of your case file homework assignments, except you can't use it because your professor probably hasn't read Houseki no Kuni, unfortunately.
Probably not. I should definitely advise them too.
Oh, you like researching mental illness? Here.
Yeah, this series is full of it.
If you can't get enough of your mentally ill people, here you go.
Right? There's so much to look at. We're probably definitely not going to be able to cover everything, but I just picked out some of the things that I thought were the most interesting, and yeah. So
we're going to talk about family dynamics for the first part, right?
Yes. I chose to look at all of the gems in the series from a kind of systemic therapy lens, which is basically when you're kind of looking at them all as a family and seeing how they relate with one another and how that can kind of cause some dysfunction. So I did that for part of it, not for everything, but one of the big things that I noticed is they have this really unhealthy kind of unspoken rule in the gem society where it's basically don't feel is what it is.
That's lovely.
Yeah, none of them reflect on their emotions. They don't tell other gems what's going on in their lives. They don't, show any emotion at all, really, in a lot of it. And they just continue to repress the emotions of loss from losing other gems or
Yeah, I think it's most clearly seen with like when they lose other characters, because it's like when it's interesting because they mentioned that like Heliodor, like that's the first character that's mentioned that was like lost.
Yeah,
they mentioned that they were lost and that they can get the pieces back together, but like none of them seem all that sad about it, or at least on the outside. And then when Antwerp was taken, it's only really Phos that is like we see who's like emotionally damaged from that.
Yeah.
And all the other gems are sort of don't like ask any questions or don't bring it up anymore,
Yeah, it's really bizarre how this rule kind of affects all of them. And it's probably something, I mean, this is speculation, but it might have been something they learned from Congo of he kind of taught them how to interact with the world and what to do. And he gives each of them a role and they're like, okay, this is what I am. This is what I can do. This is how I can contribute. But he never expressed his emotions and he doesn't really show an emotional side of how the gems can relate that way. And,
it's kind of like that in Lunarian society as well. Because when they become Lunarians later at the end, they also, the reason why the Lunarians have such a high consumption society is because they don't want to think about their feelings or the past or anything like that. And so that whole don't feel thing also carries over to them in the Lunarian society as well, where they're just masking their feelings with whatever their hobbies are. Yeah. A very healthy way to deal with it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Lunarians, they do express their feelings a little bit more than the gems do.
That is true.
And I'll get to that a little bit later. I have that actually as a little sneak talking point at the end. But yeah, I mean, we could take a first look at, I mean, personally, my favorite character, I'm a little biased, but Cinnabar. They originally start with being out kind of in the wastes. They're very much isolated. Not the wastes, but it's like the beach, which to me...
It's actually the farthest point away from the school.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They're very much kept isolated and alone, which obviously that's great for your mental health. If you can't tell, sure. This is sarcasm.
Yeah. I mean, it did wonders for Phos for 10,000 years.
Oh, yeah. Cinnabar's doing real great. they follow the don't feel rule that's given to the family by never complaining about their isolation.
Mm-hmm.
They accept the role that they're given, even though they don't like it, but they don't express that
Mm-hmm.
to anybody except for really Phos gets a little bit of that emotional tie. They kind of have a little bit of, interaction with Phos, and Phos is the one who is a little bit of our system breaker in some ways, but
Right.
not always. Because Phos is the one who realizes first that they don't like this isolation, and it's not really fair to let Cinnabar just stay on their own out in the middle of nowhere, patrolling on their lonesome at night. Because it's pretty clear that more than anything, they desire connection.
Mm-hmm.
The few times they are reached out to by Phos, they hold on to it so much.
Yeah.
And you can tell how strenuous
with the clipboard
it is.
and like shaping their mercury to look like Phos.
Yes.
Yeah. And
they're savoring those tiny bits of connection that they can get, even though it's basically nothing.
And Phos is like the only one who actually, like, Phos is like more empathetic than all the other characters, so they're the only ones who actually think about the other characters' feelings. Like, we see that in how they defend Jaya, like when Bort is like being like just critical of them, and Bort, just miscommunication. Like, Bort doesn't see it as like a bad thing or anything like that.
Yeah.
But Phos is the one who like defends Jaya's feelings there, and we don't really see any other character doing that. And same with Cinnabar. Phos puts themselves in Cinnabar's shoes and is like, "Oh, I want to help you find a better job." And no other character has ever done that in this society.
Yeah, and you can tell how much Cinnabar treasures it and how much they hold on to that idea of Phos is going to find them a job and it's going to be fun. And that's why it's so heartbreaking later in the story when the tables turn and Phos comes back and it's like, hey, I just need you to help me. And I got a job for you, and it's going to be terrible, and it's going to be awful, and it's not going to be fun. And the way it totally breaks Cinnabar's, kind of psyche and their perception of Phos, too, because they were holding on to this idea that, like, they were basically going to be saved by somebody who actually cared, and they were waiting on that, and it never happened.
Yeah. There's a panel right before Phos and Cinnabar fight where you see Cinnabar forming like the old Phos in front of the new Phos, and it's just like it shows that Cinnabar still thinks of the original Phos. Like Cinnabar never really. Cinnabar still forms them with their same legs and their same arms. Of course, it's in Mercury, so it's like you can tell, but it's like they don't have Lapis' head; they have Phos's head.
Yeah, they're holding on to that old idea of who Phos used to be, and it's hard for them to accept that that's not the person that they're faced with anymore. And later we see Cinnabar heal a little bit, and they get to choose their own path at the end, which is really nice. They become a florist, and that's super awesome. They finally get to pick a role for themselves, but it's not until they're already in the Lunarian Society and they are a Lunarian again.
So. Yeah, and it's interesting to see them shift in work being something that they don't really look forward to or anything like that, and then them being a botanist, something that the other characters have to like pull them away from,
Yeah.
Well,
I think they never really had much of a job in the first place because, the Lunarians never attacked at night.
Laws.
Yeah. But I think it shows how much they wanted to do something and how much they wanted to help out and be of value and of service to others. And that excitement at the end when they're like, I finally have a job that I enjoy doing, that I like being invested in, and it can help my friends, and it's fun, and it's, something they chose for themselves, which I think is so cool. And they're one of the few fortunate characters that actually gets a pretty good ending here.
Yeah. What are you talking about? The ending's very happy.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, we want to move on. We can talk a little bit about Yellow.
Oh, yeah, Yellow. Yellow gets all their friends back. It's all good, and they totally don't have dementia.
Yeah. I mean, the don't feel rule applies so much more heavily, yeah, for Yellow, because of how they already kind of are suppressing so many of their feelings to the point of where they probably kind of taught themselves to forget the things that happened.
It's definitely some sort of like trauma response or something where,
Yeah.
I mean, the Lunarian Society even teaches them to forget. Later in the story, we see them confuse themselves with a Lunarian. That's probably because the Lunarians have probably influenced Yellow to just forget things, because that's how they deal with things in the Lunarian Society.
Yeah.
So then they just forget that they're a gem, and they forget that they are missing their lost partners.
Oh yeah, no, PTSD responses can make you completely block out pieces of a memory. And that's probably a lot of what Yellow has done after they've been alive for so many years and had to deal with so much loss, and nobody ever took the time to sit down with them and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you want to talk about what you're going through? Do you want to talk about how hard it was to lose those people? They never ever processed those emotions. They just kept stuffing them away, kept filing them away, and it really leads to, the mental state that we see Yellow in. They're most certainly depressed.
No.
Yeah. And we can tell that pretty early on, and they're one of the most, expressive gems, I would say, in the fact that you don't get a lot of context about them, but you can just see from how they're described and how they act that they have that kind of depressive attitude.
Yeah,
just from stuffing away their emotions for so long. Yeah.
And I kind of find it interesting, their relationship with Zircon, who was the second youngest. Just those small moments, because it's really amazing how like they don't get that much screen time, but the screen time they do get really just hammers down like what their character is about, because it's the fact that Zircon is so protective of them, and the fact that Yellow, like, I remember seeing an edit where someone had the point where Zircon's head like gets shot off, and they replaced it with all of Yellow's partners like immediately after, and it's just like having someone who's so protective over Yellow probably made it worse, just because Yellow probably just, whenever Zircon would get injured because of them protecting Yellow, they would just see all their other partners doing the same.
Yeah.
And so I feel like with seeing Yellow with their new partner, of course we don't know how long they've been paired with Zircon.
Right.
But just seeing that and how they react to their partners like getting injured because of them just shows that this is probably something that's been going on for their entire life, and they've always lost partners that way.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how hard it would be to see the same incident occur over and over and over again, and know that you could never get stronger to really do anything about it. And even if you could, there's no guarantee that you could save anyone.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because that actually parallels Phos as well, with when Phos got the legs. Because I didn't catch this actually immediately, but it said that Yellow can like run really fast to run away from the things that are happening.
Yeah.
And when Phos gets their new legs, that's something that they can do too. But what's different about Phos is that their fear got in the way from them running away.
Yeah.
Which is something that doesn't happen with Yellow. And that's interesting, just with how that is.
Yeah, I mean, Yellow could have kind of just become a little bit more numb to the fear of the Lunarians after being alive for so long.
That is true. And Yellow is, I guess that would make it the opposite. Yellow is harder, so it would be harder for the Lunarians to take Yellow.
Yeah.
Maybe. Phos, I guess Phos has probably always been pushed to the sidelines because they can always get taken really easily. So they had never been like faced full with like a Lunarian before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Do you have anything more to add about Yellow, or are you thinking about
I think I'm good there, but we can move on to talk about Ghost.
Oh yeah, Ghost is
so
insane.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, Ghost and Karagor, they're a little, it's weird.
Yeah.
But there's so much to talk about with them.
Oh yes. I looked at it and at first I was like, could this be a depiction of DID, which for those of you who don't know is dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. And I looked at the traits and I looked through the DSM, and it's a little bit hard because obviously these are gems, they're not people.
Yeah.
So all of the descriptions of what I'm looking at here are going to be a little bit different.
And it makes it weird because I don't know how it's interpreted in the disorder, but it's weird because Cairngorm and Ghost are seen as separate entities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't think it quite fits the category of being a dissociative identity disorder. Because when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm now looking at this as being two separate people, even though Ghost does have this discontinuity of self, and their sense of agency is kind of messed up. And at times, it's a little bit hard to tell who's actually in control, specifically when we're looking at Cairngorm, who just has a couple of pieces of Ghost still in them.
Yeah.
Other than that, when they're just wholly Ghost, they're completely Ghost. And afterwards, they're completely Cairngorm, and they're entirely two separate entities there. But for that one little period of time in the middle, it's a little bit hard to tell. They definitely have like the alterations in their affect or how they appear.
Yeah.
And their perception is definitely changed. Yeah, you can definitely tell that there's two or more distinct personality traits. And so it's a little bit hard to tell. Personally, I think they're two different people, so I wouldn't call it dissociative identity disorder.
Disorder, like, does it specify that it's still both like the same person, and that's why?
No, not exactly.
So, like, how does it work, and how does it not relate to Ghost in that way?
See,
because that's why I was really wondering, because that was like my first thought when I was like, this could indicate that, but I don't know much about it. Yeah.
I think that it's not, because they can fully split to be two different people, like physically.
Yeah.
And it's not one who's just mentally in someone's head. Like, even when it comes down to being like Phos and Lapis, I also wouldn't think that it would be DID, just because they could separate and physically be two different people.
Yeah.
And usually dissociative identity disorder, it starts as one person, and then you get the multiple different personalities or characters in your head, and they can kind of like take over and take action, but they can't take on their own physical form and be their own separate entity. Yeah. So that's why I wouldn't classify it, but I did definitely look at it. And the reason I kind of decided that it's probably not is also just because the gems can change as a result of the new materials they're with. So it's basically like what they're composed of is making up their personality now.
That's also like a really interesting thing about all their characters too.
Yeah. No, and it's a huge theme that goes through the whole story, and that's why when we get to the end, we're like, is this even the same Phos that we knew before? Which I think it's an amazing point of storytelling, and it's
so good.
It's something I've never seen done before, and it makes me so excited, because I'm like, I have never had so many questions about a character before, and seen them change so much physically and mentally
every single moment of the story, and yet we still don't know. Like, that's what's so great about it. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. It's amazing. But building off of that, I think I have this one point where I can't decide if the best thing Acnea ever did was free Ghost and separate them, or the worst possible thing. So I guess now we're going to switch from talking about Ghost to specifically talking about Cairngorm. So that breaking of Ghost to Cairngorm by Acnea builds trust between Cairngorm and Acnea. And it is the foundation of their relationship. And it is exactly what Acnea uses to groom Cairngorm. And this is why I think it could be the absolute worst thing that ever happened. And at the same point in time, I'm somewhat glad that they're free to be their own person. I just wish it had been anyone but Acnea.
So, when did I record? I recorded the attacking all the ships video like a day ago or something. I don't remember. All the days went together. But in that video, I discussed how Acnea gives Cairngorm the illusion that they get to choose.
Yes. That is Oh my gosh, that's literally what it is.
That's what it is. Is because Acmea gives Cairngorm an ultimatum, and the reason that Ghost retaliates is because I believe that Ghost probably understands the little bit of manipulation tactics that Acmea was doing. Because I believe that like Ghost was manipulated by Lapis, and Ghost learned those manipulation tactics to use on Cairngorm. And I believe that like Ghost realizes that Acmea was taking Ghost's power away from Cairngorm, and that's why Ghost retaliated in that way.
Yeah.
But the reason why is because Acmea didn't give Cairngorm the option to like just talk to Ghost about it or to just reason it out with Ghost.
No, they made the decision for them.
Because Acmea basically, with his words, like alluded to if Cairngorm stayed like this, they would be miserable. Where we don't know if that's true. We don't know if they could have worked it out or like they could have still had a good relationship. Of course, we do know that from Ghost's actions inside Cairngorm that Ghost is not mentally okay either.
Oh no.
But it's very interesting because I kind of thought about this when in the scene where Phos sees them as like a couple for the first time.
Yeah.
Like it's Acme is like giving Cairngorm choices because he like brings out all these photos and asks Cairngorm to choose, and Cairngorm doesn't want to choose at first because that's not what Cairngorm usually does. Cairngorm has someone influence everything that they do.
Right.
And so when Acmea tells Cairngorm to choose, like Cairngorm chooses something. But one thing I thought about is that all those options are probably catered by Acmea.
Yeah.
And so I believe that like Acmea gives Cairngorm the illusion of choice by making it seem like it's only the options in front of Cairngorm. And another place I think Acmea does that is when Acmea like talks to Cairngorm like after they got married and kind of talks about like Cairngorm like going away because he was basically saying like, oh, the wedding was actually just a show, you know, to show that we're like closer to like the gems and Lunarians are closer together. And basically, again, gives Cairngorm two options: to stay with him or to like go be themselves and live on their own or something. And Cairngorm again chooses Acmea because Acmea made the other choice sound bad, even though it sounded like it was a choice.
Oh yeah, it's pure manipulation tactics. Yeah. And either way, if Cairngorm was living on their own, they would still be fulfilling Acmea's plan to keep them separated from Phos.
Yeah,
he's giving Cairngorm options, but
to
the
be
options
exactly opposite to Phos.
Yes. He's basically put them in a box and given them that illusion of choice of like, oh, you can choose things, but you can only choose things that are in the box that I have already made. And so it gives Cairngorm that sense of freedom that they've never had before, but they don't realize that all of their choices are already being pre-selected, more or less, which is like classic grooming.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we're going to talk more about that rather than Cairngorm themselves a little bit.
Sorry. I mean, it's so much about their character, which is really awful.
Yeah, it is, because it's immediately what happens is they don't really get that choice.
Because we don't get to see Cairngorm without any influence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acmea immediately inserts himself in their life and is like, guess what? You're going to do everything with me now, more or less. They kind of make this trust development really quickly because Cairngorm has never had any like sense of what to do. They're super naive. They just kind of have, you know, a choice for the first time in their life and they don't know what to do with it. And Acmea gives them a lot of attention, makes them feel like they, you know them really well, better than, you know, Cairngorm even really knows himself. Yeah. For sure. They kind of, you know, have their own little separate conversations a lot and get to know each other well, which makes the trust increase, and they kind of share their own little secrets. And basically they make Acmea makes their behavior seem natural. Yeah. They pretend like everything they're doing is totally normal and this is how it is. And whenever Cairngorm is like, hey, I don't understand what's going on.
Like with marriage.
I don't know what a wedding is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acmea explains it to the angle that it will most benefit him.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, it's just a little celebration to show people how in love we are and how fun things are going to be for our little relationship.
Yeah.
And so Cairngorm just goes along with it because they don't know any better. And they're just like, this makes sense, sure.
Yeah.
But Acnea is constantly leading them in a specific direction. And what makes it worse is that nobody calls them out, except for Phos. Phos is the only one who at the very beginning is like, I disapprove of this. And everyone else is like, why? It's so lovey-dovey. And Acnea does such a good job of separating Phos from Cairngorm that they never get to actually be able to express their disapproval. And also the one time Phos did express their disapproval, they said it like very bluntly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how you're going to be able to get somebody who no longer knows you or trusts you to listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize this until like recently, but the conversations there's actually like a lot of conversations between Acme and Cairngorm, and Acme's red flags are so apparent.
Oh yeah.
Just like this man is like, I remember like when
he's
I was
a red banner, not a red flag.
Yeah, it's like his house is like completely painted in all red.
Yeah.
And like the reason why Cairngorm doesn't see any of this as bad is because they've like groomed. They've been conditioned to think that Acmea is this great person.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Acmea is like verbatim like telling them all these bad things that he's basically done, Cairngorm doesn't see that way because Cairngorm has never been manipulated in this way. Acme's manipulation is clearly like more malicious, whereas with Lapis and Ghost and Phos, who've all manipulated Cairngorm as well, they were mainly manipulating Cairngorm for their own gain, but not really except for the part where Ghost tried to get Cairngorm to decapitate themselves. Other than that,
yeah,
I'd say for the most part, they didn't want to hurt Cairngorm's well-being intentionally.
Yeah.
Whereas I really don't think Acmea cares about Cairngorm that much.
No, and I don't think so either. Yeah, they kind of really just mostly care about keeping them away from Phos so that Phos is isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And they also isolate Cairngorm. Cairngorm doesn't really have much of a relationship with most of the other gems after this. Like, they interact with them some, but they're very casual friendships. And even then,
in the lore book, I just call it the lore book because its name is ridiculous. But one of the fashion designer that worked on Cairngorm's clothes, because they have dialogue in the lore book. Mm-hmm. They talk about how they see Cairngorm still as lonely, which is really interesting because it's like even now, like you'd think, like Cairngorm, who's kind of like a little bit of a celebrity, like on the moon and stuff like that. Like you'd think they would be like less lonely because of that, but maybe that's the relevance, because I was trying to figure out what the relevance was, because that character mentions that Cairngorm really liked this ancient story of this character whose name was Sebo, and I thought that it was in reference to something, but I couldn't find any like relevance to it, which a lot of things in Houseki no Kuni are like that. Yeah. But it could just be the fact that it shows that Cairngorm like might be more lonely, because it said that the story was about like a character who was more lonely. And so it's kind of interesting to see that
celebrity status will really isolate you. Mm-hmm. It's hard to make deep friendships when people think that they know you just because you're popular. Mm-hmm. And Cairngorm very much maintains that surface level relationship with most people, including the gems. They look at Cairngorm, they're like, oh, you're cool, how are things with Acnea? But they never actually invest in getting to know them. And I guess that feeds into the whole don't feel rule, is nobody really expresses, any deep emotions. They don't ever try to get to know each other.
And I mean, Cairngorm's outward reflection of themselves has always been for other people and never for them. That's why we say we've never seen the true them, is because when they were with Phos, they tried to look as much as Antark as possible. When they were with Acnea, they try to be what Acnea wants, which is the exact opposite of Antark, and that's why they do a complete 180.
Yeah, that's why they dress all fancy and try to go kind of froofy and and let's see.
You're like all your notes.
Yeah. I mean, the don't feel rule affects Karen Gorm in a way because they also never learned to love. And they
Yeah.
don't ever have that modeled for them, which is why their relationship with Acnea, can be so toxic, is because they don't know anything better.
Mm-hmm.
And they do kind of show that they want to feel more than a lot of the other gems do, at least for the idea of having a relationship. I don't know.
It's kind of interesting because the gems have no concept of like partnership in a romantic sense.
No, they don't.
And so that's one of the reasons why it also feels like grooming, is because like literally all the gems don't know about it, and then that's why it just feels weird. It's kind of interesting because they must have a concept of it, because Daya like talks about it like even before like everything happens, but I don't think they have like a real concept of what it is.
No. And Daya only probably knows because they've been around for so long.
Yeah, because Daya is one of the older ones, I guess.
Yeah.
But I still can't. There's the scene where Acme and Karen Gorm are like talking about like how they're leaving to go like cuddle or something, and Daya is like, "I want to watch it." Like,
oh yeah.
But Daya, there's actually a scene in Party at the end too where people believe that it's Daya kissing a random Lunarian person. So it's like one of those things of like they probably got more conditioned into that like as they got into Lunarian society, but they didn't know anything about that. They knew very little about that stuff before then, and that's why Karen Gorm not really know anything about that, and then Acme is shaping them to be like more romantic when none of the like gems know about that, is why it makes their relationship even worse as well.
Yeah, none of them leave the system of that's been established in their family of like not feeling until they become Lunarians, really, which is kind of a wild symbol, I guess, of them breaking the family system by literally leaving the family
and becoming a different race
and becoming like Lunarians, as they're deciding to entirely change their identities. And then that's when we actually see them start to embrace who they want to be. They choose,
and that's them becoming spirit too.
Yeah,
like
so it could just be a whole transfer of them, switching from being like bone to spirit, where spirit is more vibrant and alive, and choosing to invest in things that make them happy and make them want to do something more than just a simple role they've been assigned. Now we can look at the giant task of picking apart Phos. Which, oh boy, is that a thing.
Yeah, so you have like the people who can't see your notes. There's like half of the page is like on Phos, like at the top there's like a couple lines for each of the characters, and then you go to the back, it's just all Phos.
It's all Phos. This whole page that I have is basically just my brain vomit on everything of just trying to pick apart things that I was thinking of at the time, because I'm a little bit of a writing processor. Writing things out helps me kind of figure out what the jumble is in my head. But the way I started with this is, there's that classic question of nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
And I looked at that with Phos. And it's a little bit hard to see if Phos started this way and then changed because of the different elements, or did they also change because of the gems around them? And there's a scary question of, did the gems start off making Phos like the way they are?
Is it? No, I saw someone talking about this. I read so much stuff on Houseki no Kuni that I never remember where I see this information. But someone mentioned, oh no, I think this was just me having a conversation with someone on Discord. But we were talking about how Congo society contributed to how Phos was made.
Yes.
Because Congo made a society, well, you call it the family structure,
Yeah.
Congo made this family structure where every single person has a role, everyone serves the society, and that's like how it's supposed to be set up. But Phos breaks this rule. Technically, or Phos breaks these rules. Technically, Cinnabar does too, but Cinnabar took initiative to find themselves a role in the society for them to fit in.
Yes.
Whereas Phos, even if they get a job, they quit it quickly because they could do the encyclopedia job, but it's because they were too dangerous and rebelled. It was sort of rebellion what they did.
Yeah.
And it's because of that they literally break society. And oh man, I said this in one of my analysis videos, but it's really interesting because I was talking about how Phos would, in a regular society like ours, Phos would be a criminal and probably behind bars.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But it's because they don't fit into society, and that's the reason why they do these more reckless things, is because they don't fit into the like box that Congo has put in all of his gem children in.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I can't say their name. The Admiralibus race.
Yeah, our little snail guys.
The snail people, they give Acmea their criminals. Like, that's a lore bit.
Yeah.
They give them the criminals, the people that don't fit in, the people that are ostracized from society and don't fit into the social molds. And it's really interesting because I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, they don't have the population to really have a jail or to have criminals in the gem society, but Phos would definitely be there if they did, and they do make a jail for Phos at that point, and then which I guess is
when
basically what it was.
Separate them all over the island. That's their form of imprisonment.
Where was this going? Oh, Phos doesn't fit in to the society.
Exactly.
And it's the reason why Phos goes on their journey is because they aren't able to fit into Congo society, and Congo society can't mold to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which leads into, how much that affects their self-esteem and their self-worth, which is kind of central to Phos. I mean, it's what propels them throughout the series is they don't feel like they fit in. Yeah, they don't feel like they fit in the little family system that was made. And so they're like, all right, let's see what is respected and what people appreciate in the gem society. And that is fighting. Yeah. They're like
Eren Yeager.
Oh my gosh. They're like, if I can be stronger and if I can change myself, then people will respect me, and that's the role that I should have. That's what I should aim for, instead of being like, you know what, I can respect and care about myself because I am who I am, and how I was made is just perfect the way I am. And if Phos had been told that at the beginning, we would not have a story. I can't stop thinking about that. If they'd even expressed and had the emotional range to talk about, like, hey, I don't feel appreciated for who I am and for what I'm doing. And if somebody had been able to reach out and say, no, you are valuable just the way you are.
It's also very interesting because the very first arc sets that up.
Yeah.
With when people think that Ventricosis is Phos, Dia goes around and sees what people think of Phos.
Yeah.
And all of them don't validate Phos.
No, they don't.
And it's interesting because they say that when they think Phos is there, even when, because Dia presented at Phos, it's kind of astounding because it's like, have they said those things to Phos in the past? Or Phos, even if they haven't said it verbatim to Phos, Phos probably picks up that they know that everyone sees them as useless and not in the society.
Well, they joke about it to Phos's face. They're like, oh, you're lazy. What did you do? Lay around all day on the hills, that kind of stuff. And Phos definitely can read into the undertone of that, of being like, oh, they don't think that what I'm doing and spending my time on is valuable.
And getting Lapis's head makes that so much worse too. Because Cinnabar says this, but Cinnabar always isn't direct in how they say things. And when Phos is their original self, they don't pick up on a lot of what Phos says. Or what Cinnabar says. And when the first time that Cinnabar meets Phos with Lapis's head, Cinnabar mentions in their little thought bubbles that they caught immediately what I was trying to tell them, because Cinnabar speaks so indirectly. And that just shows that now Phos with Lapis's head can read more into what people are saying about them and and probably understands more of their role. I think back to the final words that Cinnabar and Phos say to each other, and it's exactly what they've been talking about the entire series. It's so crazy because they're talking about their work and their value in society. And Cinnabar saying that they know when Phos says all these bad things about the society kind of just shows how much Cinnabar still wants to play into the society and Phos doesn't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this just shows how much Phos never got any sort of value or validation from other gems, which is what they were really craving the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
They just wanted to thank you.
yeah,
And
literally.
that's the last words that the Lunarians say to Phos.
So sad.
Phos finally
They
gets that
finally get,
validation when everyone's gone. It's awful.
yeah, once they make themselves into something they never originally intended to be, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
even really themselves anymore.
They get given the most important role in their entire society, but it's not what they wanted.
No, they just wanted to fit into the family system and to be valued for who they were, but they never got that. I mean, in psychology, you talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, basically essential needs that every person is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have. And one of those is self esteem or self worth needs. And Phos never gets that met, ever,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning. And it's not until they literally start breaking apart pieces of themselves that people start to respect them.
They only
And
get it's only Cinnabar actually. Cinnabar doesn't tell them verbatim, but Cinnabar is the only one who expresses concern in their change.
yeah,
Everyone else just compliments them. Wow, you're so much stronger than before. Wow, your legs are so great. I wish your arms were like that too. Like
yeah,
that's literally what some of the characters have said.
yeah,
And it's um, like none of Phos gets validation from change. They don't get validation. They've never gotten validation for who they are. And
yeah,
that's why they encourage others to change. That's why they tried to tell Cinnabar. That's why they tempted Cinnabar to come to the moon by saying that they can get rid of the mercury. But Cinnabar says no,
yeah.
because Cinnabar wants to be validated for who they are
Mm-hmm.
and not for
Which could for
the
Cinnabar. That's
I
why
know,
I love you. You're
yeah.
going off on my favorite character. I'm like,
But
thank you for appreciating yourself, even if you have a lot of self-loathing at the same time.
yeah, but that's what
Yeah,
Pebble does.
yeah,
In the characters at the ending chapters. I can't wait to read 106. But Pebble rejects Phos's advances for change.
yeah,
Um, and it's really interesting because um, Cinnabar does the same thing.
mm-hmm.
And like, I think that Phos could not fathom that Cinnabar would reject getting their mercury removed.
Right.
And it's very interesting to see that.
Yeah,
That, like, the mercury is seen as a worse thing than Phos being brittle.
mm-hmm.
And uh, Cinnabar still wants to stay in the society and have the role that they have, even if it means, like, not getting rid of their mercury, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They're satisfied with what they are and who they are, even if it doesn't meet the standards of other people,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. And honestly, that's a lesson I think everyone can take to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is, like, when does Phos stop changing? Because Phos has always come back with new changes.
Mm-hmm.
Phos is never satisfied. Like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we could be reading too much into it, but maybe Cinnabar, like, rejecting Phos goes further with them seeing that Phos is constantly changing, and they feel like it would start with the mercury and they'd have to change to someone that they don't know either, because they don't know who the new Phos is in front of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that they might have made the mistake of wanting change earlier in the series, but then after seeing what it does to Phos, they're like, okay, I see that this is doing more harm than good,
Mm-hmm.
and I would rather stay with my family and, be able to live the life that I always have and still be loved by Congo and, just keep with that rather than changing the core of who they are, really.
That's another thing too,
Yeah.
Phos is that Phos is the only one who loses major pieces of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you don't count Ghost being a major part of Karen Gorm, but
Yeah.
Cinnabar stays whole, and Cinnabar, like what you said about Congo still loving them, is that Cinnabar remembers Congo's love for them, I feel like Phos loses so many memories, like by the point that they're ready to like betray Congo, that they don't even remember like Congo loving them that much. We see that they get a
Yeah.
small glimpse of remembering that, but they say like, "Oh, don't think about that now." It shows that Phos is, even if they do have some memories of Congo loving them, they are pushing them down.
Yeah. Well, and we know that they doubted it because they suspected Congo of being, an antagonist for so
They think
long.
Congo is the manipulative one, which is
Yeah.
so
It's not
awful.
true. And, they've kind of, their mindset has been shaped to be that way by Acnea and by also losing so many of their memories and then only being able to remember specific pieces, which sometimes Acnea even shaped.
Hmm.
Like, his whole part about being like, oh, don't let Phos remember that whole long time on the island when they were separated, because that would be.
I think the like take care of the memories thing was so that Phos does remember the agony from that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
um,
yeah, maybe remembering agony over love then.
yeah,
Yeah.
the fact that um Acnea doesn't tell them the reason that Congo won't pray is the biggest thing that Acnea does that like
Oh,
influences
yeah.
that. Because Acnea knew the whole time the reason like Congo wouldn't pray is because he didn't want the gems to go away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. It's so awful.
Yeah.
um,
But yeah, so Phos basically starts changing themselves, and it's because they want to be a hero. They want to be
well,
respected.
that's what the book says. The
Yeah.
hero of our story.
Yeah. They say it from the very beginning, and it hurts every single time. You watch your hero get worse and worse and worse mentally.
But they're still the
Yeah.
hero in the end.
They're still the hero. Yeah.
Um,
Somehow. Yeah. They also kind of fit into this role that's talked about in dysfunctional families as being the doer role. They feel like they're the type of person that needs to be the one accomplishing all the tasks, making all the change, being helpful and useful all the time to save their
they
friends.
want to be needed.
They want to be needed so badly that they put themselves in every single circumstance that they could possibly help out in. And they do this at the cost of their own rest and their own well-being. Even though gems don't really need to sleep anymore, having time to rest is still important.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, I'll do winter duty. No, I'll stay awake all the time. I'll
No,
fight
I'll
in
go to the
every fight.
moon.
I'll go to the moon.
That
Take
is
the
true.
most extreme
Yeah.
kind of lens of what they need to do, and they will be the first to sign up to do anything. And they're always the one trying to like solve the problems
Mm-hmm.
because everyone else
Doesn't do anything about
doesn't
them.
do anything. They know that something is suspicious about Congo. Some of them know more information than Phos does at the beginning of the series. And they just kind of ignore it. They're like, you know what, this is our system and it works for us. And we know there's some suspicious things, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But Phos here is our system breaker, and
Whatever it
whatever.
is.
They're the one who are like, no, I'm going to go investigate this. I'm going to go solve it so that I can make things better for us.
Mm-hmm.
And
You know, another thing I just thought of now with the Phos being more empathetic to other characters is I just thought about how Bort, is the one who proposes that they team up for that small bit, and
mhm,
Phos is the only one who stops to consider Daya's feelings. I
yeah,
didn't even think about that until now too. Is that they're like, oh, I need to check with Daya on this, and Bort didn't even think to do that.
no, they didn't. Yeah, which is part of, again, why Phos is our system breaker of, they do sometimes shift against that motive of the unspoken rule of like, don't feel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, in dysfunctional families, the doer role is often someone who is lonely, tired, they're taken advantage of, they feel empty and neglected, and they only seem to get satisfaction from being good at a task, which fits
Which
Phos perfectly
and
because they do everything to search for a good task for themselves that will make them useful
that's
so that they
literally
can
the
feel
catalyst at
valued.
the beginning.
Yes.
Oh man,
Yeah.
wow. um, that's awful.
Yeah. And basically everything is just this tireless search for self-esteem and for validation.
And they think the way to do that is to get rid of pieces of themselves. They think getting rid of the things they don't like about themselves will gain them more self-esteem, but they just find more things to hate about themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The things to hate about themselves just kind of keep changing.
It's like how the stripes didn't bother Phos before with their new legs until they thought about it. Like, they were like, oh, cool, I have new legs now. I can now run. These are so great. And then they got the arms. And then they're like, oh, people think that the legs are weird. I should cover them up with powder.
Yeah. Yep. And then there come insecurities, and Phos finally realizes, like, oh, what I thought was great maybe isn't. So I'll just keep changing again.
Yeah.
Which is not the way to go. Gosh, I know we wouldn't have the story if somebody told Phos they were perfect the way they are at the beginning, but at the same point in time, I want to go back to the beginning and just give her a pat on the head and be like, you're fine the way you are. Don't change anything.
Don't change yourself for other people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And because of those changes they continually make to themselves, we kind of end up seeing them get...
You should flip to the PTSD page of the DSM-5.
PTSD. In case you couldn't have guessed that one from all of the tragic events that they endure.
And remember that all those tragic events happened in like a year.
Yeah.
And they've been alive for 300 years? Man.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And, you know, these are a little bit hard to categorize because, again, Phos is not a person.
They were only with Antark for 28 days.
Oh, it's just crazy because of the impact that it has on
them. Yeah, it's
for the rest
so
of the series. Yeah.
There was another series where they had only been with a character for a short period of time that really affected them, and I don't remember which series it was, but when I remember that, it reminded me of that, and now I don't remember which series it was. Anyway, continue.
Oh, yeah. So they've, like, directly witnessed huge traumatic events. They have witnessed traumatic events occurring to others, and they have experienced extreme exposure to adverse details of those events, like finding the pieces of their friends literally
in the moon that they see every day.
Yeah. Having to look at that every day. My gosh, it's awful. They obviously can't express positive emotions because of it, and just in general, sometimes we really see Phos kind of spiral down after all this stuff has happened.
Which one? Which spiral down?
Oh, there's so many. I'm just saying in general. I mean, it starts after Antark, and it just keeps getting worse after that.
Each of their physical changes is accompanied by trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's a physical sign. It's them physically carrying their trauma with them throughout the entire course of the story.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting visual representation of it, because not only are you, like, seeing their mental struggle with it, but you're seeing it in the different elements they carry, to the point where, like, sometimes Phos just is trying so hard to repress their emotions that their, like, body actually reacts instead because their mind won't let them process it. And we just see, you know, them, like, crying streaks of gold, or, like, they're just spazzing out or whatever.
It's interesting because I think they're, like, the characters don't have brains. Their physical self is themselves. That is their names.
Yeah.
Phos is Phosphophyllite. They are the physical components that make up their body. And that's seen personality-wise. So their body is their mind in a way. And so when we don't need Phos to narrate how they feel or what's going on in their mind, because we can just see it visually and we're like, oh, that's a mess.
Yeah. Oh, and it's crazy. Just such an amazing description visually of what it is.
That's why it's so great as a
love
comic.
The art. Yeah. It would never work as, like, a story that was written to describe it. You wouldn't be able to get the full picture of what was going on. Yeah.
Like I told you, I only started reading this series for the art, and then I was like, why is this story so good?
Yes. Literally. Yeah. Other than PTSD, Phos definitely has major depressive disorder. Obviously,
Phos is just twinning with, like, almost every other character.
Yeah, they kind of are like the collection box, you know, going for the Pokemon trainer of the DSM-5 here. Trying to collect them all.
Game for collecting mental illnesses.
Oh my gosh. Man. They would win. They would win.
It's a
Yeah.
mental illness they don't have. You read the caffeine intoxication one? They don't have that yet.
They don't have that. They don't have.
Actually, if they spent more time on the moon, they probably would.
Yeah, maybe.
They have.
They can't really eat.
The lore book talks about how they have drugs on the moon. Actually.
Oh, that's fun. They did have that one like light candy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like specifically candy. It was kind of interesting because I was reading the lore book and I was like, "There's canonical drugs."
That's hilarious.
There's
I mean,
like,
it is kind of the Lunarians left are the group of like criminals and miscreants. So
yeah,
I'm not really surprised.
It's a little like vague on that because I mentioned that in another video and someone mentioned that they decided that through a hierarchy of like their souls. So we really don't know the criteria they used to know that. So we don't really know. But yeah.
Yeah. That was the impression I got.
That was also the impression I got. But yeah. But it's interesting. Well, we do see like one Lunarian like smoking something in one panel. I know too much about this series. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
But in the lore book it talked about how they have drugs but they don't have any of the bad side effects of the drugs. And I was like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
Anyway,
right.
Sorry, we don't have to talk about drugs. I mean
that is one thing Phos doesn't have. They don't have a drug addiction.
Phos is not a drug addict.
Yay! That's the one thing they got going for them. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But they definitely have major depressive disorder. Maybe not at the beginning, but definitely at the end.
I feel like it might just be more mild at the beginning. That's my interpretation of it. Because I feel like they did have it at the beginning, but they were like better to hide it, or they had it at the beginning, but their life wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it being possible. They're definitely the kind of character who's good at masking.
Yes.
So they can
definitely.
They're great at putting on an act and pretending like everything is totally fine and they're just being themselves when they're literally falling apart inside.
Literally physically falling
apart. But yeah. They have, by then, they totally have the whole depressed mood. They have totally lost interest in anything that would be like a pleasurable activity, anything that they would think of being fun.
That's actually
trying to do. Where it's at the beginning, we see them trying to engage in something that they're like, oh, this could be interesting, or maybe that would be something fun that I would want to be interested in.
We see the other gems doing that, actually. When they go to the moon, we see the other gems try out things, and they sort of have to like coax Phos into it. Like Phos doesn't seek them out.
Yeah, no. And Phos is dead set on their one goal,
and they aren't interested in anything else. And we see it get worse as time goes on, but all the other characters get way more incorporated into the moon.
Yeah. They all start learning to have fun and to try new things, and
which is kind of interesting because it shows that Phos wouldn't fit in as a Lunarian as well. Because Phos doesn't fit in on Earth, and Phos doesn't fit in on the moon.
Which probably only worsens their like conditions for everything. Basically, it makes them want to be more of a doer. More of somebody who is trying to meet that goal because they're like, if I can meet that, then it'll make other people happy and I'll finally be able to fit in this other society. And they still don't, which just kind of leaves them with like a whole lot of overdeveloped responsibility and guilt because they're trying to be the only one who's solving this. And they're failing.
It's also kind of interesting because none of the other characters really show a lot of resistance to them either. Like, I guess the gems do when they put them in boxes all over the island.
Yeah.
But, like, specifically Congo and Acmea both don't really give Phos any resistance in what they want to do. They just let it happen. Like, even if it's bad, Congo allows Phos to do it. Even if it's, no, Acmea just doesn't resist anything that Phos does, but he's manipulated Phos enough to pick the things that Acmea wants to do.
Yeah.
So.
And Phos is separated from the only people who actually did care to try to call them out. Like,
I feel like Padpa Racho is like the only character that would have been able to be a positive influence on Phos, and Acmea separated them from them. And Karen Gorm would have too, I think, definitely, because Acmea took so much to separate Phos from them.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that Acmea only did that to Karen Gorm because Karen Gorm was the only one that mattered. Everyone else that Phos brought to the moon, he wasn't concerned about.
Yeah, exactly. And then Cinnabar stayed behind, which
also could have been influenced by Acmea. I'm still not sure about that.
Interesting, yeah.
But like Acmea specifically did not target Cinnabar at any time, at any moments, and that might have been to create what Cinnabar has.
That illusion of like satisfaction with their life
and
what they have.
The start of Phos's journey as well to do that. And so it's kind of interesting that way.
That is so interesting. Yeah, but nobody calls Phos out, and they don't take a moment to talk to Phos, even when they see that Phos is like literally spazzing out and things are going wrong. They just kind of let it go. Even when Phos literally looks like an entire monster, they're like, that's fine. That's just how Phos is. And I wish that somebody would have stepped in. Like, again, the story would not be what it is, and we wouldn't be able to have like the whole point that we're getting towards.
I told you this before you started reading the series, actually. Yeah, because I was like, I don't know if it's love or hatred. Like, I don't know if it's care or if they don't care. Because I thought at first I thought it was nice, because I was like, Phos is literally the worst they've ever been, and people still treat them the same. But then I realized that the same is not caring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would not say that this is love.
No.
When you love somebody, you care about them enough to call them out when things are going wrong.
Which everyone in the story is basically an enabler, isn't it?
Yeah. Very much so, actually. And not to the point where they're like even trying to be peacekeepers or anything. They're just kind of letting Phos live their life, and they don't really care about them enough to really say anything at all. It's kind of bizarre, actually. Like, it's so, all of them play such a passive role.
I mean, they're non-human characters,
but still, yeah, it's weird because we do know that they can care about each other.
The reason why the time skips happen when they do is because literally nothing will change if Phos is not active. That's literally why Phos is so ingrained in the story, because when Phos, literally the time skips, Phos gets their head cut off. There's 105, I don't remember, I think 105 years where Phos is asleep. Like, Karen Gorm becomes the Winter Gem. Morg and Goshen get taken, but that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
But the society is exactly the same as it was.
Yeah.
And then Phos gets scattered into a bunch of pieces all over the island. Nothing changes. It's the status quo has changed since the last time that Phos has done it, but the Earth Gems just continue their Earth Gem lives, and the Moon Gems just continue their Moon Gems lives. And nothing changes until Phos gets resurrected.
Yeah, Phos is the only instigator that there is in the story.
Because the characters would have just accepted the new normal.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
The most clear part of like nothing will change. It's just such a visceral image of just Rutile holding Padparacha's like basically heart and just staring at them, and they're still in that position when Phos invades, and it has been hundreds of years, I believe.
Yeah.
Just the fact, and all the characters have a conversation around Rutile while Rutile's there. They basically just treat Rutile as a statue, but Rutile is fully conscious. It's so insane to me that they're just casually talking, speaking to each other like nothing has happened. And they won't do anything to help Rutile. They won't do anything to resolve that conflict. They just let it sit there.
Yeah.
They
which really just shows how deep the whole don't feel rule is. Is that they're looking at this catastrophic scene, and they're just like, oh well, he's been sitting there for a while, we know this, we're just gonna move on with our lives, not gonna ask what's going on, not gonna try to help, not gonna say even any words of condolences,
not gonna try to resurrect Padparacha at all.
No. Rutile is the only one, and they're just like, yeah, that's his little project, and yes, it went to pieces, and we're just gonna leave it. Yeah. It's tragic and it's terrible, and it says so much about the character of the Gems in a way that is really terrible, actually.
Yeah. And I guess, like, man, I don't even know what's going on with Rutile.
I don't know either.
I guess that's like an obsession thing, is what Rutile has. But
yeah. I mean, they made that their role, and they made that the focus of their entire lives.
And I think, like, their care turned into obsession, and to the point where they didn't care about Padma Raja like anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
In a way, it kind of parallels Phos's.
Everything parallels.
Yeah. Well, because they just became so obsessed with that one
Antark.
test.
Yes.
Yeah, and Phos became so obsessed with Antark, and they're like, this is my everything. I'm putting all of my cards in one slot, and that's where it's going. And whenever it crumbles, so does Rutile and so does Phos, because they don't know how to move on without that one person.
That is true. Like, when Phos truly goes ballistic is when they start saying that they don't need to bring Antark back.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize this. Rutile does the same thing. Rutile goes ballistic once Pod Project gets taken away and their whole purpose is stripped. Mm-hmm. They're finally given, they can do what they wanted to do, which Phos was given that same choice. Oh man, everything's a parallel to Phos.
Oh yeah.
Phos was given that same choice to resurrect Antark. They were finally given that choice. Rutile was given the same choice. They could finally bring back Padparaja. And they both refuse.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. Wow.
And then that's when they both lose it.
Yeah. Where Rutile's just sitting there and Phos decides to go to genocide. But,
yeah, you know. those endings were a little bit different, but...
yeah. It's so crazy. The whole world of Houseki no Kuni is just like a whole thing of like psychological mumbo jumbo, and it's so crazy because you wouldn't think of it at the beginning. To me, it's crazy how the beginning arcs seem so peaceful and nice, but everything in the beginning arcs reflects with the end.
Oh yeah. No, I remember when you introduced me to the series, you told me pieces of what happens in the middle and in the end.
I spoil everything.
Yes, unfortunately, but also fortunately because I probably wouldn't have started it without hearing
I actually didn't spoil a lot of the major things. I didn't spoil Ghost and Karagor because I really wanted to see a reaction to that.
Yes, and it was awful. But yeah, looking at the beginning, whenever I started, I was like, this is nothing like you told me it was going to be. Like, it just seems like a slice of life. Like, these little gem people are on their little island doing their jobs. And then you get to the middle and the end, and you're like, oh, this is where it was going the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you just see the absolute, like, corruption of each of the characters. Well, specifically Phos. And how far they go without any help at all. They have no support group, which is really another part of Phos's whole downfall, is they don't have anyone that they can turn to. Yeah.
Thank you, Acmea.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But that was the thing that Acmea had to break, because he specifically mentioned that he needed to get rid of all of Phos's support.
Yeah.
In order for Phos to turn out that way. It's crazy because the ending can change everything.
Yeah.
The next couple chapters could change a lot.
Oh, and I'm so interested in seeing how it ends.
I can't wait. But, like, the thing is that this has been such a downward slope. It really, I think Ichikawa will end it on a happy note, but it's we've never actually had an upward slope in I was about to say Noragami, Houseki no Kuni. And, like, the thing is that ending it where it ends it now kind of makes it seem like humans are, like, all awful. Because that's where it kind of goes. With Phos turning into a human, and how to get Phos to human is to literally break them apart. Yeah. It's kind of showing that humanity is really broken, you know? And so I wonder how the ending will change, and if it'll change the story's view on humanity.
It's such an interesting point. 'Cause, I mean, I really don't know if it will or if it won't. I kind of hope it does. I would like to think, you know, personally, that humanity is a little bit better than how Phos portrays it. But
I mean, that's why I thought it was so good, because with a lot of series, they like to prop up, I don't know, to me, I feel like it's more in line with, like, our own belief system as Christians, because it's like, we believe that humans are inherently bad, and so to me, it, like, brings up that statement of that, like, humans start off as broken, you know? But it is kind of interesting, because all the other characters are broken as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I would love to see it have a little bit of an upward note where it starts at this idea of, yes, initially humanity is bad, but we also have the capacity to do good. And we see that a little bit with Phos and the Pebble people and how she kind of looks out for them. They're very little and like naive. They don't know what's going on. But Phos has already maybe started to kind of settle, to realize that they're potentially accepting themselves as they are now in this final form, and the potential to do good.
I'm hoping
it's hard to tell where it's going to go from here, so I'm hesitant to say much.
That's one of the great things about Houseki no Kuni is I kind of wish, but I'm glad that I didn't experience this, but I kind of wish that I did follow it more as it was coming out, because it would have been interesting. Like, you can go back and see people's theories, which some of their theories were absolutely insane, knowing what actually happened. But it's crazy because we can see how everything is perfectly planned out, but actually, like, thinking about it at any point in the story, what happens next, you will guess wrong. It's so good.
I remember you asking me if I had like theories as I was going through it, and I was like, I really don't, because it can change by the next page. Everything is not what you expect, and it's so unlike any traditional series that I've ever read, which I love because it does not have a predictable story arc, and you really don't know what's gonna happen.
Because, like, even at the beginning, if you ask them, like, oh, like, volume 1 done, what's going to happen? Oh, I bet at the end Phos is going to fulfill Cinnabar's wish. They do, in the worst way possible.
And it's not even really Phos who's taking the initiative. It's Cinnabar being like, okay, now I'm in this new place, let's figure things out for myself because I can. And that's beautiful for Cinnabar, but really terrible for Phos.
I guess mainly because if this is a shonen, we were talking about this earlier, because I was like, I do still vaguely consider Houseki no Kuni a shonen. Usually they elevate their protagonist and not make them completely... Okay, Hunter x Hunter does that too. I just have a thing...
Hunter x Hunter is kind of a subversion of the shonen genre, and I guess Houseki no Kuni can be too. So.
Yeah, like... I just have a thing for stories that like are very unexpected, and that's why I love Hunter x Hunter too, is because it does kind of that same thing where Gon is actually very static, I'd say, because
he doesn't really
the downward turn that he takes is ingrained in his character, whereas at the beginning Phos exhibits some of that, but it's really a downward spiral, which is a difference between them. I guess it's because Gon is static, Phos is dynamic. That's the difference right there.
Yeah.
But like, it's both the like unexpectedness of the shonen genre for the character to get better. I guess in Hunter x Hunter, I didn't expect to compare Gon and Phos, but both Gon and Phos get better power-wise, like power, physical, and level-wise. But Gon stays the same. Phos gets worse. They get their mental status or their moral character diminishes.
Yeah.
Or I'd say Gon stays the same. But like, it doesn't improve, which what most shonens do. Like, I know you haven't watched all 1,000 episodes of Naruto.
No.
But
unfortunately, I will never start that series.
But with like Naruto is like very classic shonen, and like that's the first shonen I watched. But like Naruto always has the moral high ground. He's always he gets better throughout the series and gets more morally correct, if that makes sense. He becomes more of a greater character along with his like power like scaling.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen with Phos or Gon, and that's why Hunter x Hunter and Houseki no Kuni are more of my favorites.
If anything, they get stronger as they get mentally worse.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always like whenever they snap, with Gon it was losing Kite, and with Phos it was losing Antrak. They both are like, okay, now it's time for me to learn how to get better powers and get stronger.
Yeah.
And, really embrace that. And yeah, it's kind of wild how they decline and they get stronger, and it's worse for the plot and it's worse for the people around them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they both have green hair.
That's
another comparison.
Comparing Gon and Phos,
whatever you started comparing them, I was like, green hair twice.
I mean,
Phos doesn't anymore, but originally.
Does Phos even have hair anymore?
They do. A little bit.
I guess, yeah.
A little spikier than usual.
Yeah. Um,
Oh no, wait, now they have like the little halo kind of thing.
I don't know what's going on with
I don't know.
Phos's new design, but yeah.
It's very modern, sleek.
Phos went through the like the what is it called when like logos get more simplified or something?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know if that has a word, but yeah.
I'm not a graphic design major.
Oh man. But yeah. Did you have any more notes on Phos?
No, I think that was about it. We're kind of rambling a bit at the end, but yeah, basically.
Do you want to define the other family dynamic things? Because I know don't feel is the main one, but there are 4 others, right?
Yeah, so the traditional like big 4 unhealthy family rules are to not talk, not feel, not trust anyone, and to always make the family look good. The one that plays out the most through this series is the whole don't feel rule.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the others we can see maybe a little bit, but they're less hard and fast rules and more like a kind of policy at the time, like always making the family look good or that not trusting anyone. That's only one that Phos really takes on. Everybody else has a pretty strong sense of trust, even if they don't have grounds for it,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting.
Yeah.
They have that innate trust, and that's just kind of part of the system that Congo put in place.
I have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I had seen this. This might have also popped up in the conversation with people, but do you consider nurture to be a form of manipulation? Because there was someone who mentioned how, like, nurture, but like, has Congo manipulated the gems? Like, manipulation has like a negative connotation,
mm-hmm.
but like, hasn't Congo manipulated the gems just in how he's raised them?
I mean, I think it could be, yeah.
Of course, he's trying to like. Is there a difference between nurture and manipulation with him trying to form the gems and how he thinks is best? You know.
Yeah, I do think there's a difference between nurture and manipulation. Manipulation is a very
Negative.
Yeah, it's negative and it's also intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're choosing to do this because you want things to play out a specific way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Congo necessarily does that. I don't think of him as a manipulative character, even though it is indeed possible
Mm-hmm.
that he kind of led Phos towards this path or down this path. Or at the very least, he was complacent and didn't stop Phos when he saw that they were changing for the worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's necessarily manipulative. I do think that it is passive,
mm-hmm.
and that he kind of plays a nonchalant role in things. His parenting style is very hands-off.
Yes, it's just to go run in the field.
Yeah.
Or lie down.
It's like, here's a job. If you don't like it, oh well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll figure out a solution for Cinnabar eventually. It's been centuries.
Yeah. And we kind of see by the end that Congo never really wanted to be a parental figure.
Yeah, that's true.
He just wanted to have companionship. And so that could kind of play into it. He might not have put in a whole lot of effort to raise gems because he didn't feel like he needed to, or because he just didn't want to.
He's a very much hands-off single father.
Yes, yeah. He didn't go get milk, but he does just tend to go to sleep
Phos
whenever they get attacked. Phos got milk, and then came back with an army. Not the milk from the store they expected. Milk,
but I did find out all the lies of our father.
Ignore the militia behind me.
Oh no, that was one of the other things too. Is people were talking about how the gems were completely outclassed in that fight. Like obviously.
Oh yeah.
I forgot what the quote is. Like bringing a gun to a knife fight or something. I don't think that was the quote, or you know, like coming over prepared or something. They're like most over preparedness because all the gems. Like, not Benito didn't even do anything. But, like, all the gems, like, just completely decimated all the other gems. And the Lunarians really didn't do anything. They were just there for cleanup.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gems took care of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yes. Cat. There's a cat over there.
Yeah. She's looking around.
What do you think of Houseki no Kuni? No comment?
No comment? Alright.
Did you have anything else?
I think that's basically it. It's a lot. We've been talking for a while,
Yeah.
and you can't tell, these characters are all very
There's
traumatized.
so much to talk about.
Yeah, if we wanted to take forever, we could look at all of them. I just kind of picked and chose
The
a
ones that
couple
are
of
most mentally ill.
yeah, the ones that are at least most obviously so. It's so hard because the Phos is the main character, and we only get little glimpses of
Even
all the
Phos.
other characters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard to look at somebody who gets very little, screen time or book time, I don't know what you want to call it, but presence in the story, and be able to, try to diagnose them or figure out where they would fit into the whole family system and stuff. So, yeah. That's basically it.
Do you have any comments on Houseki no Kuni in general?
I think
Cinnabar's your favorite.
Cinnabar's my favorite, obviously.
I was gonna say, do you have a least favorite, but I feel like that's kind of obvious.
Agnia. Yeah. Yeah, he can die in a hole, and I would not care.
I mean,
he's already dead. He can exist forever in agony, and I would not care.
Yeah,
that sounds a little worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have
but I think it's a great story, and I think it's so unique and well told.
Yeah.
And I'm a lover of stories. You know this. We both very much enjoy engaging with content.
Rank it? Because you...
Oh dear, don't ask me that question.
I mean, when you finished it, you told me you still like Attack on Titan more than it.
Yes, I still do.
That's going to be our next conversation.
To be fair, Houseki no Kuni has not ended yet.
That is true. It could go badly.
My interpretation could change. It likely won't.
Yeah.
But that's also just because Attack on Titan has a special place in my heart, and I have specific memories connected with it.
Would it be FMA next? Do you put FMA over this?
Let me finish my rewatch of FMA and then decide. That's also the show that literally got me into anime, and I really started engaging with a lot of different stories at that time, and finding that I really enjoyed. And
you haven't watched Steins Gate yet.
I haven't watched Steins Gate yet. Yeah.
Not that I would put Steins Gate. Steins Gate is on its own playing field, which is why.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stories that I like, and it's sometimes really hard to compare them, especially if you're going with different genres, or if you're looking at books versus anime versus TV shows. It's hard to pick a ranking of things. Yeah.
I mean, I really hope that all of Houseki no Kuni gets animated, because it would be so interesting.
Yeah. I would love to see it.
I'd love to see the interpretation of some of the because some of the very specific panels,
Oh yeah, visually it would be stunning, especially towards the end. I can't imagine how they're going to portray the Lunarian society.
That's
and everything.
The one thing is maybe Orange didn't pick up a season 2 because the Lunarians is probably really hard to do.
They looked at it and they're like, "This is going to be too hard."
Yeah, but it's so crazy just how much the end influences the beginning or something. Maybe I do need to put Houseki no Kuni over Noragami. Maybe I'll wait till it ends.
Yeah.
I love Noragami so much.
It's another parallel we'll have to pull out with the Attack on Titan when we do the comparison between those, because they both have beginnings that very much affect the end.
Yeah.
Or at least foreshadow it, and oh, it's so cool. I love that kind of storytelling where at the beginning you have no idea what's going on.
I was saying we need to do a 3-way comparison.
Oh my gosh.
Man, that's one of the things. Is Hunter x Hunter doesn't have an ending. I don't know when it will. It probably will. We'll see. But that's one of the things that's really nice about Noragami now has an ending, so that's really nice. And that's the nice thing about Attack on Titan and all the other things.
Yes.
I can't wait for Houseki no Kuni, and it feels like it's ended already, which is why I'm super curious about what the next chapters entail. But I can't wait to see how the ending wraps it up in a beautiful way, because I bet it will. We just trust Ichikawa. We've been disappointed throughout the entire series. It can't get worse.
Yeah. We say that, but knock on wood.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we have to wait to see how Houseki no Kuni ends. I might have to put it above Noragami. We'll see.
Rachel.
I said that I put Noragami above it for now because
of the ending.
Well, because Noragami is something that Noragami is more entertaining. it doesn't fill me with dread.
That's true. Yeah, I could reread or rewatch Noragami a lot easier.
Noragami does have a bit of dread, like in the later arcs.
Oh yeah,
but like actually at the beginning too. But it has a lovely balance between dread and comedy.
Yeah.
Houseki no Kuni is comedy, but the comedy is also sad.
Yeah, you look into it and you're like, oh, that's hurtful, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why, even though I might think that Houseki no Kuni is better written, it's really hard because they're so different.
Yeah,
and
I can't make a comparison. I have a lot that I'm like, these are some of my top things that I like, and they're hard to compare one another. I mean, like, how do you compare Houseki no Kuni with something like, Fruits Basket? Yeah, it's one of my other ones that I'm like, I absolutely love. But they're so different.
Yeah.
Or like, with the favorite book series or something.
Wait, you've watched Steven Universe?
I have watched Steven Universe.
Can't believe
this is an entirely different vibe from Steven Universe.
I still can't believe
we're not
that they used Steven Universe as the advertisement of the back of the first couple volumes. It's so crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh.
Steven Universe is also a good show, and it does have fun little moral themes weaved in every now and then, but
it's so different.
It's not this at all.
I can't believe we get so much comparison. Because they do have they have all the same characters. Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah. Wasn't Lapis your favorite character in Steven Universe?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think of Lapis in? You get to see them for so long.
Oh yeah, and they're totally live. Yeah.
They get so much screen time.
They're both emotionally unstable.
That's true.
That's one thing they have in common. Lapis kind of gains more emotional stability in Steven Universe by the end of it. I actually really love her arc. It's very well done. But I won't get on that. That's a totally different topic. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's everything talked about.
Yeah, that's the end.
Right.
Thanks for listening to us for
however
long.
We'll see if we watch a K-drama after this.
Yeah.
Hey guys, be nice to join the comments and let me know what you thought of this type of video. And please subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support the content I make, you can check out my Discord in the description, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee link. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you.